What would you do if the person you loved most, the one you trusted with every secret, every dollar, every part of your life, was secretly plotting to kill you? Would you even see the warning signs? Before we dive in, pause for a moment, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, let's dive into the true story of this greedy wife. Daniel Miller was a known kind man who worked as an auto mechanic and built his reputation slowly. He trusted people easily. He ran a modest auto repair shop on the edge of town, fixing everything from rusty pickup trucks to sleek new sedans. The regulars liked him because he never overcharged, never cut corners, and always had a kind word ready. By the time he turned 48, Daniel had turned his small shop into something steady, and over years of careful saving and smart investing, he built a fortune of over $1 million. For him, the money was not luxury, it was security. It meant his family would never worry about what they will eat tomorrow. His wife, Linda, was by his side through much of it, or at least that's how it appeared to everyone who knew them. She was polite at church, generous with small talk at neighborhood gatherings, and always smiled when standing next to Daniel. To the outside world, she was the kind of wife a man like Daniel deserved. She was loyal, supportive, dependable. What no one realized was that beneath that smile lay something else entirely. Over the years, Daniel noticed small shifts in her. At first, it was easy to ignore. Less affection, less laughter, fewer shared conversations late into the night. He chalked it up to the weight of time, the natural drift that some marriages endured. What Daniel never suspected was that Linda's growing distance wasn't from boredom or tiredness, it was from calculation. Daniel trusted her completely. When he spoke of their future vacations they'd take, retirement plans, maybe even passing the business to a nephew, he said we instead of I. He assumed their bond was strong enough to weather anything. But Linda was no longer thinking about we. She was quietly calculating a future without him. Linda lived in comfort, but inside she was restless. She looked at Daniel's careful habit, saving receipts, tracking expenses, working long hours, and felt only contempt. To her, his frugality wasn't security. It was chains. She wanted more. The $1 million wasn't just money in her eyes. It was freedom. It was the key to living life on her terms, without Daniel holding the account. Every morning she poured his coffee, smiled, and asked how he slept. Every night she kissed his cheek and told him she loved him. But behind each word, she rehearsed lies. The affection was an act, a mask she wore while her mind ran on greed. Her thoughts grew darker with time. She imagined herself on vacations Daniel would never approve of, buying clothes he'd never pay for, and moving into a house that carried only her name on the deed. She started to believe she deserved that life, that she was owed it. And once someone convinces themselves that greed is a right, there's no telling what lines they'll cross. Daniel noticed none of it. He thought her mood swings were normal, maybe stress or boredom. He kept working, kept saving, kept planning their future, while he talked about building stability. Linda was planning how to destroy it all. Linda's greed eventually turned into planning. She considered poison first. She spent nights scrolling her phone in the dark, reading about chemicals that mimic natural causes. But each option felt messy. What if she slipped up? What if it didn't work fast enough? She couldn't risk suspicion. Hiring someone crossed her mind next. A robbery staged to look like a break-in gone wrong, maybe. But Linda was too greedy to pay anyone. Why give away part of the fortune when she could take it all for herself? Then came the simplest thought of all, a gun. No chemicals, no strangers to trust. Just one pull of the trigger, and the problem was gone. That thought settled into her mind like a seed, and the more she turned it over, the more comfort it gave her. From then on, every smile, every word, every gesture she made toward Daniel hid that secret. He never noticed. He kept on with his life, unaware that each day he was walking closer to his death at the hands of the woman he trusted most. It was a Friday night when Linda decided it was time. Daniel sat in his favorite chair, the television flickering blue across his face. He laughed softly at something on the news. Behind him, Linda stood in silence, her hands trembling as they closed around the grip of the gun. Her breathing was heavy. Her chest rose and fell like she was about to collapse. She whispered to herself, convincing her own nerves. This is the only way. This is my chance. Her breathing was heavy. Her chest rose and fell like she was about to collapse. She whispered to herself, convincing her own nerves. This is the only way. This is my chance. For a long moment, she just stood there, the gun lowered in her hand, her face empty. Then the ringing in her ears turned into a rush of thought. She had done it. The money was hers. Linda dialed 911 with shaking fingers. She forced her voice to crack as she pretended to cry. She told the operator her husband had been shot. She repeated it over and over like rehearsed lines. But her tears never came. When the police arrived, Linda put on a performance. She gasped, clutched her chest, stumbled as though grief was pulling her down. But detectives are trained to notice the details, and they noticed her dry eyes. They noticed how her story changed slightly each time she told it. Within hours, Linda was taken to the SID office. She sat under the harsh light of an interrogation room, hands clasped tight, eyes darting between the detectives. One leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate. "Did you kill your husband?" Her mask began to crack. The calm she tried to fake slipped away. Every question pulled her deeper into a hole she could not climb out of. For the first time, Linda realized the fortune she killed for might never be hers. The silence in the interrogation room was crushing. Linda sat hunched in the chair, her fingers tangled tightly together as if they might hold her story together. The detectives had barely spoken, letting the weight of the evidence press down on her. When she finally opened her mouth, her voice was brittle, straining to sound calm. Her words poured out like a flood she couldn't stop. She said Daniel kept everything from her, that he controlled the money, that he was preparing to cut her out of the will. She felt cheated, like the fortune he guarded so carefully should have been hers by right. Greed had burned hotter than reason, and in her mind, pulling the trigger meant freedom. She tried to paint it as an accident, a moment of fear gone wrong. But the detectives reminded her of the angle of the shot, the precision, the way it was done. It wasn't fear. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. By the time she buried her face in her hands, the room was quiet again. The case was no longer about if she had killed him. It was only about why. And the answer sat heavy in the air: greed. When they finally let her out in handcuffs, the hallway buzzed with officers, some shaking their heads, others whispering about the woman who traded her husband's life for money. The trial moved swiftly. Prosecutors laid out the confession, the gun, the motive. The jury didn't take long to decide. Guilty of first-degree murder. The gavel fell, echoing like the last nail in her coffin. Daniel's fortune never touched her hands. What remained was divided among his family, the ones who had loved him honestly. Linda was left with nothing but the walls of her cell and the endless weight of her choices. Neighbors whispered, headlines blared, and the story spread far beyond their quiet town. And in the end, the warning was clear. The darkest monsters aren't always strangers lurking in alleys. Sometimes they sit across from you at the dinner table, smiling, waiting, while greed grows like a shadow you cannot see until it's too late. So what do you think? Was Linda truly driven by greed alone, or was there something darker inside her all along? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more chilling creepypasta true crime stories just like this one.